Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. And welcome to another Anoraknoween. That special little time of year when we celebrate the spooky festivities by maybe reviewing music that's remotely spooky if we're lucky. But today we might indeed be lucky, as we got ourselves an album by the Stranglers. The last time I talked about that band was when I started this year with the very underrated 1997 album, Written in Red. So I guess it fits and figures that I'd begin this Halloween with the Stranglers album as well. And this time, it's a real classic. And this one was rather impressively done and released just several weeks after their first album. So let's not waste any further time as we jump into their second 1977 album, No More Heroes. The cover is pretty neat, showing a wreath on what seems to be a coffin with a few rats lingering about, keeping with the rat motif of the previous album, all bathed in this blood red. And that little brass plaque there was actually designed by Stephen Stapleton of another band called Nurse with Wound, and it's a very neat plaque as well, with kind of sort of Tim Burton-esque kind of font to it, which is very good, and is almost as good as their actual classic red logo font, and I think it does fit the kind of punky rock music itself. And speaking of, let's see if the actual music itself still lives up, shall we? We begin the album with I Feel Like a Warg. Yeah, for those who may not know, the term warg was often used as a slur in British and Australian English to refer to people of colour, particularly those from the Mediterranean, India, Middle East, Northern Africa, and even certain parts of Asia. So, the thing about a lot of punk rock music and the punk music of the 70s in general was that they often tended to be on the politically incorrect side of things, and as such, never exactly shied away from using a bit of vulgarity usually for the sake of shock value. And the Stranglers were certainly no exception, as we'll see later on here. Hugh Cornwell sings about how he, feels like a warg, getting all the dirt crappy jobs, but everyone's got to have something to do with their time, like paying for subscriptions on a streaming service so they can keep watching, maybe. At one point, he even makes a reference to the Gollywog. For those who may not be in the know, Gollywogs were all dolls that used to be popular here in the UK, and I really do mean used to be, because thing is, they essentially resemble blackface minstrels. And you can get fined if you dare display one in public. Yeah. But if you were to read between such lines, like, I was born here just like you, don't call me a gollywog, and I don't mean you no harm, just don't ask me to shine your shoes, you might find that the song is actually kind of calling out racism by turning it on its head, essentially, showing the mistreatment that minorities had to put up with back then. Just doing so in their usual typical Stranglers way, and unafraid to do so. Aside from all that though, this is still a nice rocker with a fast pace, nice beat, and good percussion from Jet Black, as well as a sweet jet organ solo from the late great Dave Greenfield, the grungy bass from Jean-Jacques J.J. Bonnell, and of course the distinct and recognizable vocals and guitar riffs from Hugh Cornwell himself. Next is Be Itching. I think you know what the actual title of this track is. Anyways, this song is sung surprisingly not by Hugh, but by J.J. Bonnell, and he does good at making his own voice distinct from Hugh's while still managing to fit the whole aggressive punky vibe just as well. Most of the song he goes on complaining about the Windsor Sea and the Western Sea. The Windsor Bee and the Eastern Sea, on the other hand, he doesn't have much of a problem with. They're totally fine. But in the chorus, he's telling you the gospel truth. I guess his audition to be a member of the Muses from Disney's Hercules didn't go so well, so he just settled for this Stranglers band instead. He asks if we could just tell him something new. Must be pretty annoyed and tired of people hyping up the same old fad. There's a place with a lot of eyes. Seems the hills really do have eyes. Literally. Strange smoke perfume around the peacock guys. And it smells like mustard and grape jelly. Weird. And the girls, they move their heat to the impulsive, compulsive beat. Well, they better be careful with the thermostats, though. Jokes aside, this is another decent track in the Stranglers' discography, and one that shows off and demonstrates JJ talents not just as bassist, but also as vocals as well. Throw in a groovy, carefree guitar solo and organ solo as well, and you're in for a rocker that, like with the first track, doesn't even care who it may offend. Then we have Dead Ringer, one of 2 tracks in this album to have Dave Greenfield in the main spotlight of leading vocals, but not before the song starts with a deep, thick and tasty bass, similar to the one from Peaches, followed by a sweet guitar riff as well. Dave first questions whether or not he had seen you somewhere before around here, something I'm sure he must have asked a lot of fans and people who attended nearly every Stranglers concert, and were lucky enough to do so. Then in the chorus, he and a few backing vocals bet that you're a dead ringer. Dead ringer is essentially and actually an idiom for someone or something that may have happened to be a duplicate or replica of someone or something else, as in resembling a person perfectly, or at least near perfectly. Then he bets that you're a conqueroni stringer. So, does Dave have a problem with people playing with conkers as a hobby? Wasn't it you who was into changing the law, but mostly trying to legalize weed? And wasn't it you running around proud of being poor? So Dave must be singing about Kenny McCormick from South Park. Neato. The chorus itself does sound very similar to that in the Ramones song Blit Creek Bop. You know, the one that goes, A, O, let's go bit. Probably was coincidence, but since they both happen to be punk rock songs that have been released about a year and a half apart from each other, I'm sure there must have been some kind of influence, conscious or subconscious or unconscious. But of course, Dave gets to show off his keyboard skills by playing a very dreary and slurry solo while saying various words in a very cartoonishly creepy manner as we end the track altogether. After that is Dagenham Dave, as opposed to his cousin Edmonton Eddie. Another track with the vocals of J.J. Burnell. This seems to chronicle a particular person that went by that very same name of Dave. Actually, upon doing a bit of research, this song was apparently inspired and was about an actual obsessive fan of the band back in the early days when they were just starting, who possibly went by that actual nickname. And he supposedly committed suicide by jumping off the Tower Bridge in London back in February of '77, before the Stranglers had even released their debut album, as they were at the end stages of recording it at the time. If you want a bit more further detail about the real deal, there's a site I'll link to in the description below. But anyways, this could basically be seen as a tribute to the real Dave, and being the big fanboy he was, who saw potential of the band and how they might make it big soon, I'm sure he would have liked this song and be proud and flattered by it. Even if the lyrics could be seen as embellishing and taking a liberty or two. Then we start to bring on the nubiles with Bring On The Nubiles. After 3 songs of other Stranglers members taking lead vocals, Hugh finally returns to take the main spotlight again here. And right off the get-go, he sings that he wants to make love to you like your dad and be your Superman. Although I'm pretty sure the actual Superman wouldn't be into incest. Unless he's probably a bearded idiot. He then goes on to sing that he wants to kiss your zones erroneous, and that there are plenty to explore. And let me F you. You can definitely tell what this song is about. This is already becoming quite a dirty episode of mine. This might be one of the most horniest tracks I've ever listened to, or even had any knowledge of. Not just from Stranglers or the punk rock genre, but music in general. It's almost aggressive in that respect, and I dare even say, fascinatingly impressive. I mean, there are many other songs before and ever since that had quite the amount of innuendos and double entendres, like Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, but this is probably the most blunt of the bunch that I could think of. And being one of the more shorter tracks in this album, it goes by just as fast as it starts, which sums up quite a bit of punk music at the time, come to think of it. And side 1 ends with Something Better Change, the third song with J.J. Burnell on vocals again, singing what could be considered a protest song, which, being a punk band, is very likely. In the first few verses, JJ questions us if we don't like the way he moves, the things that he says, and the way he seems to enjoy it. I mean, if he really does enjoy it, we enjoy it as well, so why wouldn't we like it? And then when we shout things he claims to not care, yet he cares enough to acknowledge and bring it up anyway. Okay? Then in the pre-chorus bit, JJ sings that something's happening and it's happening right now, but we're too blind to see it according to him. Seems JJ must be playing with madness alongside that prophet and his crystal ball. And in the chorus itself, JJ repeats that something better change. But what is it that better change? I don't know. Your guess will probably be as good as mine, if not better. Then in the second verse, JJ asks if the way he dances buggers us. I mean, I tried to find some video or footage of him actually dancing online, so I won't be a big judge on that one. Do you like the cut of my clothes? Personally, I wouldn't be bothered by such cuts anyway, but I have a big feeling his tailor would be. Then after another chorus, about midway through, JJ shouts out to Hugh, signaling him to take it, as in do a sweet kicking guitar solo. And a sweet kicking guitar solo he does. Likewise, he later says the same for Dave, who does an equally vibrant keyboard solo. After which we get into a gripping end with the guitar, bass, drums and organs coming together and ending the first half of this album. The talk of changing the song and being a punk song in 1977 make it seem like a potential protest anthem of the British punk movement of that very period.